și să depășească granițele convenționale și să lărgească orizonturile consumatorilor. Această abordare inovatoare și multidisciplinară îl fac pe Karim Rashid un pionier în domeniul designului modern. De data aceasta am nevoie de liniștea dumneavoastră ca să-l ascultăm pe Karim Rashid, pe care vă rog să-l aplaudați ca să urce alături de noi pe scenă. Please, Mr. Karim, I invite you on stage.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So, good evening. This is the fourth time I'm here, and every time I come here, a lot of people talk in the background, right? So, the way to deal with this is we should have one person walking around going shh, shh, shh. And you know what? Just now, when the gentleman before me, I don't remember his name. Matteo. When Matteo talked, there's a lot of rude people, you know, like, so everybody just, and if you don't want to listen to me, there's a couple more floors. But anyway, this is the fourth time I'm here, and I really thank RIDA. And I think RIDA, I just want to mention, is very important for the interior design community at large in Romania. And I judged the competition, and it was a lot of entries. I don't even remember how many. Well over 200 entries. Now that's 200 interiors just in this last year. And one thing I will note, and I think this is very important, can you put my images up? Very important. You notice the growth. Matteo said that the Milan Fair had almost 500,000 people, correct? He was wrong. 430,000. The most in the history of the fair. Why are there there's 400 people tonight here, 450. Last year there were 350. This growth is happening for two reasons, actually three. First reason, post-COVID. Coming out of COVID, we started to all recognize the importance to live in a good domestic environment. Regardless of your budget, regardless of your income or your strata or your size of your family, spending 724 for a few years at home taught us how important home is. No question, right? Second, I think, I've been designing now 40 years, and what I saw is the change in the world. 40 years ago, besides a few pockets of places in the world, maybe a few pockets in Scandinavia, maybe a little place in Germany, maybe Paris a little bit, maybe Milano. In general, most of the world didn't even know what design was. They didn't know the subject of design. Do you know AI doesn't know the subject of design? You know that? Because the other day, I typed in, I was asked in an interview to name some upcoming designers that I look up to, that I respect. Over there. Shh. Go up to the next floor. There's all kinds of food. So, where was I?
The designers.
AI. Okay, sorry. I flew in from Caracas. We were in Caracas last night. Can you imagine it took 20 hours to get here? So, and by the way, Venezuela, very hard as an American to go into Caracas. I was very lucky. Beautiful country, amazing country. Okay, AI. So I'm interviewed, many times I'm interviewed, it says, you know, who are designers, masters you look up to, who are people that educated you, all were. But not often am I asked, who are some really strong upcoming designers, right? So, I decided, I don't know. Why don't I know? Well, because even though I see a lot of work, I work in so many countries, I travel so much, and I'm very busy, it's hard for me to see and edit. But I do say a lot of young designers and design I see is not what I call design. Most of it is relegated to craft or art furniture. This is not really design. What is design? Design is objects like we see here, that it's for mass production, objects that touch people's lives at a larger audience. The Industrial Revolution created design 240 years ago. And the agenda was to make products that were affordable or accessible to the majority of the people. So when you design, I can't be selfish. Of course I have my ideas, my vision, my interests, how I like to see the world. But I have to collaborate with companies all over the world. It's collaboration, number one. And number two is I can't be selfish because it's for other people. So design is a social act, not just creative, right? In fact, if the agenda was firstly social, I think a lot of work in the world would be better. Because many designers, and including myself, sometimes play personal intellectual games that have really nothing to do with people's lives. And we see this. In fact, if you go to a museum for design, you'll see usually objects that you never got to sit on, or touch, or engage. Why? Because they are more relegated towards experiments or art-like design than they were about real design. It's rare you will go into a museum and see a sink, right? Actually, when I think about it, I don't think I've ever seen a sink in a design museum. These kind of banal objects, mundane objects, have gone so far in the 40 years of my career. I've watched beautiful things being done. Beautiful. Smart, intelligent, gorgeous, experiential objects. But with that said, in the last 10, 15 years, we've become so image-driven that we're just looking at images. To the point where most designers, especially I'll go to the young designers, are just thinking about the image. And the irony, we're looking at 2 dimensions. But what is design? Is design 2D? Is it? Of course not. What is it? 3D. It's even 4D design. Why? Because you have 3D space, and even the 4th dimension is emotional attachment. It's even 5D. Why? Because the 5th dimension could be time, which is your human experience. The 6th dimension, in other words, design can be sensorial. If we're good designers, if we design a restaurant, for example, we can't just think about it visually or in 2 dimensions. We have to think about the way it moves, the way people maneuver through the space, the way the servers, the waiters work, how comfortable when you sit. Are you comfortable when you sit? How many restaurants you go to and you're in a very uncomfortable chair for 2 hours? Never. It's absurd. This is not design. This was style. People looking at images and just creating the style. And in the interior design, because I know there's a lot of interior designers here, so many interior designers are decorating, not designing. Because if you're designing, you're thinking about those people sitting in that restaurant and what kind of experience they're going to have. I'll give you a ridiculously stupid, simple example. In the 90s, I did several restaurants, and I was obsessed with glass, colored glass. So I was making restaurants with colored glass tables. And I love colored glass because if you put a piece of, let's say, red glass here, blue here, the light starts making purple, and you get this kind of crossing of colors. I love that. But glass table in a restaurant, guess what happens? Every plate goes, glass goes, right? So I'm not thinking about the experience of the human being, right? How they engage each other when they're sitting across from each other. Is the light good? Because light is critical in design. Smell? Sound? For example, every hotel I make in the world now, I work with companies, we do the soundtracks for the hotel. I work with set designers to make the smell in the hotels. Because design is a sensorial experience, 5 senses. And the 6th sense is the one that's abstract. It's emotional. We're not really sure why we had a beautiful experience. So maybe if you work on those 5 senses really well, the 6th one is there. You walk away and you go, I had a beautiful experience. The problem with interior decorating is, and the other night I was in Caracas, one of the important interior designers there, I want to say decorators, and she showed me her office, and the table had 20 different pieces of marble. And as far as I'm concerned, they all look the same. And for me, so what? She's so obsessed with this brown and this beige and this lighter beige and this, right? No, I said to her, people will not look at the floor. They'll leave the place and say whether they had a good experience or not. And when you go to a hotel and you stay at a place and you have a great experience, what's your memory? Your memory is about your experiences, not about what's cladded on the wall or what the sink was. But if the sink is right and what's cladded on the wall is right, and you think about, and this is very important, a concept, an overriding concept, because that's the power of the emotional part that you will take away. If there's a strong concept, you're designing. And if you're addressing all these things I'm talking about, you're designing. So you know, back in the days of form follows function, function was mechanical, right? So function was like a hinge. This is function, right? Today, function, you could describe it as that you're addressing the mental well-being of somebody. That's functional, right? So we need to, first of all, change that term. Next part of design. Design is about that we progress and evolve humanity. So the numbers I just talked about, of Milan going up, the number of people going up, the interest in design going up. Why? Not only was it because of post-COVID, it was because since design in the last 30, 40 years started to do better and more interesting and more provocative and more experiential work, and designers were thinking this way, the public started to react and started to realize how interesting that when they have an object in their house, maybe it should be a little more aesthetic. Maybe it should be a little more useful. Maybe it should be more beautiful. And let me just say, I'll say very quickly, what is something beautiful? I always think about this constantly. Italians, they use this word non-stop, bella. Too bella. Thank you, Leila. You're beautiful too, right? So why do they say it every other sentence? Not because you are necessarily have a certain proportion or you're a certain height or build or the dress. It's a feeling. And you know, the word aesthetics, which I love the word, but it's misused, the etymology is feeling. We have it all wrong. That's the root, the Greek root of the word is feeling. So if you do something aesthetic, what are you doing? It's having a great feeling, right? And there's nothing better in this world, for me, but I know for others, to have that positive, great feeling. There's nothing better than walking into an office, walking into a hotel, walking into a restaurant, walking into a hospital, walking into any context where you can have a positive feeling. And how do you get that positive feeling? Right? What's your ammunition to get there? So if you break that down, you say, oh, beauty. Well, what is beauty? So beauty is not to that. I mean, I'll give you, this sounds a bit superficial, but you may meet someone who you think is very beautiful. And then after you get to know them, you don't find them beautiful anymore. Right? I always think about this. Then you meet somebody like this guy who's got a beautiful smile. Look at the way he looks at me. I'm taken.
Me too.
Oh, God. Well, we could talk. So, something just fell.
You can.
Okay, so what is beauty? If it's because the smiles and the eyes, you're seeing something more where? Inside, right? You're starting to feel the soul, right? So when you walk into a space, do you feel the soul of the space? Or do you just use cliches to make it so-called beautiful? right? And the world is full of cliches, full of archetypes, full of basically, hate to say this, copy of copy of copy of copy of copy. I was actually, probably shouldn't say it, but I can't hold back, I was a little disappointed with the entries of RIDA this year. Because I'm not seeing a nuance of something a little original. I've seen too much of what I've seen and copied and copied. And we as designers have to go deeper. Because our job is to progress and evolve humanity. And it's been happening. You know, the other day, and I know this is a functional thing, but at Milan Fair, after I looked at a lot of furniture and I showed a lot of work, I went into a company that sells faucets, Italian, and they have, at the bottom of the faucet, you put in an espresso capsule, and you get espresso from your faucet. We all know this, right? I think it's Jesse.
Yeah.
Isn't it Jesse?
Yeah.
Did they carry Jesse here? Do you carry Jesse? Oh, sorry, maybe I should mention the company. Anyway, you know what? Even though one could say that's functional, no, that's design. Because somebody designed the idea and thought, hey, why couldn't I reduce and dematerialize the machine? Get rid of the machine. And this is the beautiful thing, by the way, I love the digital age. I love this. You know, back in the 80s, when I was like designing away in a design office, the amount of stuff we had was ridiculous. We had a computer this big, a computer this big, we had a huge telephone, we had a facsimile machine, we had this, we had that. All today is in your hand, right? So the idea that you can, 724, travel the world in a casualism, in a casual age, work anywhere, play anywhere, right? Time is turned upside down. It's a new life and a new world we live in. And design can also do exactly that. It can bring us to a point where things are so beautifully seamless and interesting and inspiring. And inspiring is the word. We need to be inspired. You know, why do you think Airbnb made a competition for crazy places to rent last year? And if you go to Airbnb site, you'll see the craziest things, right? There's some house that actually, what's it named? It's after some film that floats up in the air. From up. So there's a house you can stay at that goes up in the air and floats, right? With a bunch of balloons, right? Why is this stuff becoming so coveted? You know the word coveted? Like looking for it. Like searching. People are searching for new experiences.
Competing.
Yeah? What did you say? Competing, yeah. Well, okay, so where is the competition? They're looking for new experiences, not just competing. They're addressing what the consumer wants. And the consumer doesn't want the banal hotel anymore. You know, in the 1950s, Holiday Inn said, home away from home. That was their slogan, right? So it meant if I go to a Holiday Inn anywhere in the world, I'll feel safe, comfortable, familiar, because human beings are obsessed with familiarity. This is our problem, in a way, to break out of what we have pre-associations for. That was in the 1950s. By the 1970s, 80s, I remember in the late 80s, I went to Morocco, to Tangier. I go into Tangier, and I'm at a Hyatt, right? And it's so Western and banal, you know, a big heavy wood desk in the room, the carpet is dark blue. It's like a funeral home, right? Still is, by the way. Hyatt will never hire me for that thing. Anyway, so I go, and why I'm in this place when outside the door is the Casbah and Morocco, right? And I'm thinking to myself, this is ridiculous. Because the American traveler, or whatever, feels like it's home. Today, we want the opposite. This is how much the world has changed. That's why the boutique hotel business went like this. That's why interesting restaurants and places, social places are going like this. That's why bars, these experiments, we are constantly searching now for something provocative and interesting and new. And frankly, let me add to that, something that would make our lives better, have better experience. And I think in design, in product design, for example, I do a lot of product design, objects are getting better and better. Interface is beautiful. You know, Alexa, you just say something, right? The other day I said to a client, I'm doing a hotel, I said, why are we doing the rooms in voice control? 20 years I want to make some hotel rooms where you come in and you voice control. Shut curtains. Turn on the shower. Right? We do it at home. Why aren't we doing it in hospitality? I don't know. Because some fear of technology? So this is the world we live in, right? We live in a digital age, a technological third revolution. So our interiors and environments need to be as beautiful, as smart. And when I say beautiful, from content, meaning your inside of you is your content. It's like saying, if I had to look at a Wassily Kandinsky painting, or a Picasso painting, when he did, for example, when he did with George Braque, Cubism, you look at, everybody loves that work. Why? Because it's not paint. If you're looking at the surface, you're looking at my skin, it's like the paint. But the content behind it, in harmony with that skin, that's the beauty. That's why that painting is beautiful. And it's very interesting. If you decide to put a chair here now, I'll grab a chair that everybody knows, okay? Very iconic chair. Charles Eames. Who doesn't know Charles Eames? Someone said me. You don't know Charles Eames. Of all people in this room, you know better. So, if you put a Charles Eames chair here, like a potato chip chair, the bent wood seat is moved bent in two directions. So even though sitting on hard wood is not comfortable, right, in your mind changes because the curvature says to sit. Good furniture is like this. It already is comfortable before you physically sit in it, right? Which, by the way, there's over 1 million chairs designed, and every other day, all I see is chairs that are super uncomfortable or ridiculous or dangerous by designers. So you got a nice curvature, right? So you go, oh, I want to sit, but no, you're not. The back is curved to the piece of wood, right? Then the piece of wood, of course, we can relate because we have a, like Adolf Loos said, we have an obsession with pre-association of material. So you say, oh, wood, warm. But then there's a little chrome legs, 3 legs. Those legs make what? That it sort of looks like it's floating. The obsession was to make something look appear light. So we actually like the notion of the lightness because it fights against our demise. What's the human demise? Gravity, right? And inevitably we end up there. So the chair has all these semantics speaking to you about why it's. But you may not know Charles Eames, and you may not even know the production process, but the production process of that chair was a new technology to bend plywood in 2 directions. So you may know nothing about this, but for some reason, you don't even know, subconsciously, you see all these things. So what is the chair? Is it just a visual? If you saw a flat image, and a chair just sitting there in a picture, when you see it in 3D, you realize subconsciously all these factors play a game. The combination of the form, the material, the way it's done, that's content. That was the concept. So when you go into a project, every project I go into, I'm not going to draw a thing until I think, what is the concept here? What am I going to do here? And more importantly, as a designer, because a lot of people say they're designers, are you going to do something with some nuance of originality? Why? Because let's say you're designing something, and I'm designing something, inevitably it should be completely different because we're 2 different people from different cultures, different DNA, different experiences, different education, different background, right? So then, if I look at 200 entries, every one of those people, even if the culture is similar, every person should have a different point of entry into the project and show something different. But what am I seeing around the world right now? You know what I see around the world? A sort of sameness, where trend has become so powerful because of the digital age. Now, here's the paradox. The digital age empowered each one of us individually, right? Empowered us, we have a voice, empowered us creatively with all the tools. So you would think the world would even become more diverse and more things happening, more differentiation, right? More choice. But what's happening? We're sort of picking up on one trend, and next thing you know, the world is starting to look the same, be the same. It's always a joke. I wish I invested 10 years ago in Aperol. Because I can be anywhere in the entire world, and I go at 5 o'clock, and most people are drinking an Aperol Spritz. Campari must be very happy right now, you know? They're riding the trend. Why? Why are we like this as human beings? In other words, are we making personal choices, or are the companies and the manufacturers and the brands telling us what we should choose? So, there's no excuses in a way, because we have the availability of everything and anything. We have information about everything. There's no excuse for ignorance, there's no excuse for naivete. And in fact, there's so much choice actually. Why are we moving towards singular trend? Now, as a designer, I'm more critical. I'm critical of the consumer, but I'm very critical of the designer. Because then, for the designer, they should be thinking that way. They should realize and not be seduced by the trend. Find their own vision, their own point of entry, their own concept, their own sensibility, their own view of the world, their own message, and develop projects that are different, that differentiate. So when I travel the world, and I travel nonstop, I can go see and enjoy and experience things I've never seen before. That's what I want to see. I went to Dubai, I see this. And I'm not saying every project I do is completely original, because in this day and age we live in, it's very hard to do something original. You know, I almost envy back in the days of Charles Eames. And when Charles Eames was a designer in the 50s, you know how few designers there were? And do you know how much work there was to do? So much work, so many companies don't know what they're doing, and a few designers. Today, this many designers and this many companies. Like, it's turned over. So I say, you know, I'm doing a chair right now. Right now, I'm doing a stacking, interesting. I am having a very hard time. I'm having a hard time because I'm looking to see if there's something I can contribute to that business that hasn't been done, or if I can make an improvement. And improvement's a big word, by the way. And something I learned, I have to tell you, in 30 years of my own practice, every time I design, whether it's an interior, or a product, or a piece of clothing, or a phone, if it didn't function well, it went off the market very quick. Because you know what? Consumers have no patience anymore. If you buy a pair of Nike, and they are really uncomfortable, you will never buy Nike again. We have no loyalty anymore. So you as a designer, you gotta make things work. Really work. And I am determined with every project lately that I focus on, that the things function perfectly. Because I know I'm wasting my time if they don't. So what if something looks good in an image for a moment? That moment is gone in 6 months. Maybe even shorter. The days of the Charles Eames, again, let me just argue, was when things could become iconic. So there wasn't that much choice, so something would take a long time in the market, in the magazines, in photos, and eventually it grows. Today, all of a sudden, 1,000 chairs come out at the same time this year. Right? And let's go back to the Milan Fair. 5,000 companies showing 5 prototypes means 15,000 pieces of furniture. So you think something's going to last? You know what's going to last? When somebody does something
Iconic.
that's a little bit original, that really works, and it makes relevant sense for the time in which we live. And what is the time in which we live? We live in an age where things are improving to such hyper speed, we expect that. I expect when I go into a hotel and I go into the lobby and I'm going to have a meeting, that I sit on a couch and I can have a meeting. But what happens? I sit on the couch, there's a coffee table in front of me, it's 2 by 2 meters of marble. First thing I do is I hit my knee on the marble. I sit on the couch in pain. My client is way over there, and you know what? We're not sitting on the couch anymore. If you have a couch like this, you're on the edge like this. And if you study this, study social behavior, you see how a lot of furnishings, a lot of spaces are not, we haven't considered the human as the epicenter of the context. It's not that hard anymore, AI and many other tools and much imagery, to come up with something that looks amazing and unbelievable and beautiful and strange. That's not hard. What's hard is when you come up with that beautiful, strange thing and everything, that it works beautifully with human beings. And Tori Sotsas, everybody know who that is? If you all know Charles Eames, you know Tori Sotsas? Who does not know Tori Sotsas? You all know him? Who he is? I'm shocked. Okay, we've got an educated crew here. Okay, so he said to me 30 years ago when I studied with him, you know what he said to me? He said, nothing in this world needs to exist unless it gives us a good experience. And I went, wow. That was enlightening for me. Everything else he talked about was girls. That part, I remember very well. And I realized that I have a lot of objects in my life that aren't really giving me a good experience. So I got rid of them. And I sort of dematerialized. Then, about 20 years ago, I came up with an idea. A theory. Addition by subtraction. If I add something to my domestic space, I have to let go of the same thing. Down to my socks. I buy new socks and let go of socks. I've done it for 20 years. I've had the same number of objects in my interior home. 364 objects. Sounds like a lot, but when you count every knife and fork and everything, it's very little. They say the average home has 1,200 to 1,800 objects in it. And if you have a kid, 3,000. Don't buy a lot of toys. Seriously. 3 months gone, 2 months gone, 1 month gone. Anyway, this is, what we're doing. You see what we're doing? We're dematerializing, but the things that are around you are getting better. So it's the old adage, less is better. Nice to have a better life. It's nicer to have 10 nice garments in your cupboard than 30 bad ones, or cheap ones. When I lived in Milan a few years ago, a friend of mine, German friend of mine, he had this obsession. Once a year, he would buy himself something very nice. And I remember going to the Terry Mugler boutique, and he bought himself a suit. Great, it was very expensive. He was a student like I was, but he saved his money for the one thing. Look at the world we have today. Fast fashion, we're burning 65% of the clothes. It's absurd. It's absurd what we're doing. Yesterday, CNN released the fact that this year was the hottest year on record ever of humanity. The entire planet. 1.5 to 2 degrees hotter. This is a problem. Big, big problem. So what we need to do, collectively, and I think as designers we can say a lot, to push our clients to make non-toxic things, more sustainable things, better, but less things.
Timeless.
Right?
Timeless. Timeless pieces.
Timeless. That's a tricky word. Timeless. Did you hear what he said? Timeless pieces. Tricky. Because a lot of things that we call timeless now, when they came out, they were radical. Very radical. In fact, I had a client, I just tell you a funny story. He wanted dining tables in Italy, so I'm making a bunch of dining tables. They came back and said, oh, it's all a bit too much for us. We want something, oh, he used a different word, classic. I hate this word. So, because what does that mean? That means in my mind, I have to think, classic means going back. But design is the art of moving us forward. Style is about history. Design is about progress and evolution of humanity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can anybody bring me some water? I just need some water. Anybody? Where's the RIDA team? Come on. Supposed to be taking care of me.
We found some water.
You found some water?
And the cold one is coming.
Ah, comes from
The
the
emergency one.
comes from the Delta River.
No, and you.
So, would anybody like to ask me any questions? Besides, why the hell is it so hot in here?
Why? 1.5
Please.
degrees, more than usual.
Yeah.
More.
Here, 10 degrees.
Feel the what you say.
Dacă aveți
Would you like to ask any
întrebări,
question?
vă pot oferi
Anybody?
microfonul. It's a rare occasion to
Anna,
have
ask me a
an
question.
important name here. So if you want to ask a question, the first one is for free.
Yeah.
First you have to find a very
And after that, €5 per question.
Karim?
We have some.
So, when you said timeless, of course, I mean, when we
He said timeless.
he said, what's the alternative that we kind of?
Oh, this is interesting. You know, if we want to talk about for a moment sustainability, it's a huge subject and a very misunderstood one. Very misunderstood. Consumers are like, oh my God, plastics are bad. But then all of a sudden their contact lens is plastic, and their eyeglass frame is plastic, and their smartphone is plastic, and the button on their jacket is plastic, and maybe their underwear is part plastic, and their shoes have plastic in them, and the carpet on their feet has plastic in it, and the airplane I just came over and is now the airliner is beautifully something like 45% polymer. That's why it's lighter and faster and all that. Everything in the hospital, they say roughly 70% of everything is polymer. How do you do? Every day you're throwing out a plastic carton with lunch in it, and a plastic lid on a cup, and plastic wrapping meat in the grocery store. In other words, the amount of, and you probably feel this, when you take your recycling, I notice I have very little organic garbage and a lot of recycling every day. A lot of paper boxes, a lot, it's crazy, right? So it's polymer has to be rethought, and there are many companies in the world. I know 6 of them, for example, who are doing polymers now, biodegradable, or at least 100% cyclic, or the third factor, making plastic from things like sugar. Like in Brazil, there's a company called Brasco. They polypropylene, polyethylene derived from sugar, not from fossil fuel. So that's one problem, one issue with sustainability. Other sustainability is, what you call timeless doesn't mean that the consumer will call it timeless. So if you could argue, if I do something nice and minimal, that's timeless. IKEA does a lot that's nice and minimal, and the amount of stuff after 2 years is being trashed like crazy. It's amazing, every Airbnb I've stayed in, there's a bunch of IKEA furniture falling to pieces. You know, sorry IKEA, I would love to work with you. So is that timeless? So is timeless about a form, a style? Because actually, even something like form and style is forever evolving, changing, moving. There is nothing one could really say is, and if you say, oh, but a perfect rectangle table, that's timeless, I'm not sure. Because when something moves to the next area, people drop that table. And is a perfect rectangle timeless? Well, it's not really a great thing to eat on. When I walk over to you right now, see this? Okay, I'm at a friend's house in New York, and there's a little evening sabbat, And a lot of people over, and little children are running everywhere, and one kid ran his head right into this. And when I saw that, I thought, it's funny, for 30 years I tried to make everything very soft. Like I never make a sharp corner anywhere. There's no sharp corner in my home anywhere. A little radius here would have prevented a serious accident. Now, it's not just about children though. It's about us living in space, because if you know energy of objects, even if you know something like Feng Shui, this corner is very disruptive for your mind. It's a negative energy. So, there's a lot of reasons on an emotional level, right, a physiological level, and a physical level, how question is a perfect rectangle timeless? No. So now you define for me timeless.
We've got some more questions here.
What's that?
More questions. Can we?
Okay, let's go to another.
So are we talking?
The way it's resisting the time.
You want to give him a microphone?
No. So are we talking? Sorry. So are we
talking about materials or still functionality?
We're talking about all of it combined. I don't think things are very disparate from one or another. It's about thinking about how people use and live in space.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you have some tips on how we can argue with clients?
Tips to argue with clients.
Against consumerism. How do you fight when a client comes to you and says, okay, your design proposal is beautiful, you have used, I don't know, what kind of brand of furniture, and he says, but you can get an IKEA.
Oh, what?
You can get an IKEA for the, looks the same, has the same function. Do you have some tips on that?
Yeah, okay. It's a very difficult argument. The most difficult argument that you can hear people like I am paid, or going even back to Le Corbusier, who always were fighting their clients, right? And we know this term. The reason they're fighting is because they have such a strong vision. Where the design profession has gone is most people are not designing, hence they're not fighting. They're actually becoming a service industry. They're doing what the client is asking them to do. If a client is dictating everything, you're not at all creative. Not only are you not creative, you're not designing. We think we are, but we're not. That's a reality. So how do you move your profession from being a service industry to being a creative industry? Tip. First thing is, I always noticed, if I'm very rational about my argument, I win. I can't just say, oh, but this is more beautiful. That doesn't mean anything. And even more so, their, let's say, taste might be very different than mine, right? Or I don't even believe in taste, the word taste. Because one minute you like something, 2 years later you like something else, and you don't like that, right? Bullshit. Yeah? So, here's an example. Client of mine, I'm doing a condominium in Miami. 240 apartments, right? And I showed him from an Italian company called Fiandra that makes something like sheets, you know, big porcelain sheet, right? Sheets are 3 meter high, beautiful. Because when you put them down, the edge is machined so you don't see the grout. Okay, I hate grout. Grout is a 3,000 in tiles, 3,000-year-old technology. You know, so if you put a sheet like that up in a shower, great. If you start putting little tiles, it's absurd we do this now, today. Absurd. So, I showed the material, beautiful, matte black, matte white. Oh, he also gave me the project if I promised him I don't use color, which was, I thought, very funny. Because what I realized is that it's not about color at the end. It's about what you do. In fact, a good product, for example, if it's a good product, it can exist in any color, right? So, he said to me, he's looked at the first model suite of the apartment, beautiful matte floor, light gray, beautiful. He says, I don't like this floor. I said, and why? He said, I want wood. Right? So I hate this argument, by the way. So I said to him, you know, I tell you the difference of the two materials. This will sit here in this apartment for 30 years and look the same. The wood will wear, scratches, one piece of furniture, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years maximum. And then the person has to sand down the whole floor. And he said, but this is expensive. We could use engineered wood. I said, there's your other problem. Engineered wood. Most of engineered wood on the market is completely toxic. It's full of resins. And number two, the veneer on it is so thin that you cannot sand it down. You basically have to replace the floor. And when I told him that, oh, by the way, the apartments are rental, not buying. So when I told him the floors will have to be replaced, and I told him for a 1,500 square foot, 150 square meter apartment, that floor in wood is 25,000 euro, and in this stone, it's 22,000 euro. I just said that. It wasn't true. It was a little more. He goes, okay. And he walked away. So I realized, you know, here I am, I feel like half the time, you know, deep down inside me, I'm an artist. My dad was a painter, my whole family, architect, painters. And I'm arguing with the guy about the most banal thing. But I learned that that's the only way I can get things done. I can't say to him, but isn't it beautiful? It doesn't mean anything to him, right? And another similar incident, doing another apartment building in Moscow, and the client asked for a wood floor. And I said to him, billionaire by the way, I said to him, are you going to live here? The apartments are 200,000 euro. It's an inexpensive building. I said, are you going to live here? Of course not. What do you care if it's wood or not? I didn't say it that way, I said it really nice. I said, I know what I'm doing for the people who are going to move in and live here. When they see this floor, they'll think they're in a very quality space, when in actual fact they are in a very well-built quality space. And when I said to him, are you going to live here, he realized he shouldn't be subjecting his opinion, because yes, he's not going to live here. Now they're just two small examples, I could name 5,000, you know? But if you don't hold on to your, a little bit, to your integrity, right? And I always say when I do a project, 70% at the end better be me. I'm with collaboration, but you hired me for a reason too, right? If it gets down towards 50, I'm like, what am I doing here? Really? And why did you knock on my door?
We have one more question.
Okay. Yes.
Hello. I had all the same questions, so I'm asking another thing.
So it's answered. Okay. Thank you.
What materials do you recommend for a restaurant, and what do you think is the best for artists?
What material do I recommend?
For restaurants.
Oh, for restaurant? Yeah. Well, you don't put a wood floor. Do you know, it's amazing. That's, by the way, that's the Moscow apartment. It's amazing. Amazing. See? There's no wood anywhere. Well, there's some on the wall, I guess. Anyway, it's. Say that again. What's the question? I'm tired. Sorry? Oh, flooring. Everything's different. You know, as an experiment, about 10 years ago, I put in my personal loft in New York, ballet floor. And you know why I like ballet floor? Is because the flooring is 3 meters, it comes in rolls of 3 meters, right? So when they put the seams together, they also weld. So you don't see a seam. So it looks like a poured floor. Now you know poured floors, like Artex or epoxy flooring. The problem with that is, if you don't have a perfect contractor, it's a disaster. So you need someone who really knows what they're doing, number one. The second problem with it is that with time, it starts to look really bad. Like it leaves every mark of shoes and all that, yeah. But it looks beautiful, right? So I realized the ballet floor does the same thing. When you walk in, you think you see this glossy, perfect floor. But when I put it in, I didn't realize something. The guy below me was always playing music very loud. And all of a sudden, his sound was really muffled. The ballet floor, because it's got a little bit of faux backing, it absorbed for acoustics. So I realized it's great for acoustics. So if you design a restaurant, most restaurants, the biggest problem that architects and designers don't address is acoustics. So you can't even hear the person you're with. I mean, you all have been in this situation, right? Music's loud, you can't hear the conversation, but all the hard surfaces are echoing and moving the sound, right? Aeroplanes, acoustics are so bad, I cannot understand why they can't get their act together. I am sitting here in an airplane today. 9 rows back on the left is a guy talking to his child, and his voice is like, I can hear him non-stop. Because somehow his voice is doing this, like ricocheting and going, right? Let alone a baby crying. You know? I was always thinking on an airplane, you should have these little bubbles as they come down, go to the baby, so the baby can cry at that from here. So, but we need to think about this. So what I do a lot of restaurants, for example, is we put foam under the tables, like acoustic foam. So you don't see it, but it picks the sound. Or you use materials on the wall that absorb sound, etc. But there's a lot of floors out there. You know, if you use a stone floor, I think it's probably one of the best ever for a restaurant. But you can do all kinds of stone floors. You can see what's here now, right? You can do stone floors that are actually printed. You can do patterns. You need to do your research. And today, listen, when I started this profession, research was so difficult. And you would wait a month for a company to send you books this big of samples. I never let anybody send us samples. At all. Don't need the physical thing. They either tell you where the materials being used in the showroom, I go look, or installation, and I look online at the colors and what they've done, the applications, you know? But you just flooring, hospitality flooring, you know, durable flooring, and you get the world is your oyster, you know? Like seconds.
One more question?
Yes, last question.
Hi, my name is Adrian. I'm asking about, you mentioned that you did a Miami condominium.
Yeah.
About 220 condos. My question is, how do you charge for multiple units? For example, you make 2 or 3 designs for the client. But
Yeah.
then do you take royalties on the rest that he uses?
I don't know anybody that will pay you that way. I've never seen a contract like that.
Is there any?
No, what you have to do, and I'm not, let me just tell you, I'm not an interior designer. I'm not an industrial designer. I'm not an architect. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not a writer. I'm all of them. And what I mean by that is, I don't follow the rules. You know, I never did a project where we are paid by the square meter or a percentage of the budget. I just look at the project, I think about what's involved, what my team needs for me to survive, you know, and what I think is worth the project. So it doesn't really matter, you know. For example, if I do a hotel and it's already built for a project, and there's 10 room sizes, of course it's a lot more work, right? We do all the construction drawings for 10 different rooms, etc. Condominium, you may have 3 or 4 different clients, so your work is reduced. And also a lot less work in the condominium, or an office is a lot less work. So it's client by client. And by the way, I just say everybody has different scales in different countries. Some countries, you can throw them a number and they say, this is ridiculous, our local charge, or the opposite. You know, so I don't know how to answer that question, honestly. You know, frankly, I wish I was better at that. I don't really know the answers. You've got to feel the client out, feel what their time and value is. But remember one thing, don't work for nothing. And don't laugh about that. I see so many of us in these professions working for so little. And why? You know why? Because our gene, our DNA, that's a new word. DNA could be, the first word could be design something. Our DNA is that we see potential in everything. We're excited, we're creative, we want the job because it's an opportunity to create. And that's what we're taking advantage of. And
And that's why right now, because there's too many designers graduating, many are working for nothing. And it's destroying the profession. You know? You right now were a doctor, let's say you have 10 years experience as an architect, you're no different than a doctor in 10 years, right? You've finished 6 years of school, you have value like the doctor has value. But instead, there's a mentality that, this is easy for you. Oh, you like doing this. Oh, it's a creative thing. Oh, you can do that in a few days. Next thing you know, you're 2 years on the project. Right? Okay, go out there and make beautiful work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.